Now that you have a better understanding of Captivate's timeline, we can look at the most important feature of this panel, the ability to set the timing for both objects and also slides. Now, in Adobe Captivate, objects have three timing options available: specific time, rest of slide, and rest of project. On this slide, we have a slide object, shown here, as well as 4 other items. Now in this case, the first 3 of these all have the object set to rest of slide, and that simply means that these will be displayed for the entire length of this particular slide. However, this first item, a text caption, is being displayed for a specific time. And how do I know that? Well, by looking at the information that's available on the actual text caption object itself. Now if I roll over this, in a second a tooltip should appear, and you can see that the start time is set to 0 seconds, and if I roll over it once more, the duration is set to 9.2 seconds. Again, this information is also available over here on the right-hand side of the object itself. Whereas if I look at one of the other items here, you can see in parenthesis that this particular item will be displayed for the rest of the slide. In addition, if I double-click on the first text caption, and then from the text caption dialog box choose the Options tab, you can see from the Display For menu that the option Specific Time has been selected. Now, as well as that, you can also determine the Appear After setting, and in this case, the text caption will appear right at the beginning of the slide. Now, to change that, we could enter a value in here if we wanted to, but another way of doing that would be simply to click and drag the text caption and move it to a new location. Now notice also that if I click and drag this particular text caption and place it at the end here, that now I get this little red triangle. At first, this may seem irrelevant, but in fact, Adobe Captivate is providing you with some important information, and that's that this text caption is now anchored to the end of the slide. So what does that mean? Well, if I increase the duration of this particular slide, you'll notice that the first 3 objects here are automatically extended. Whereas, with this text caption, it's only the starting point of that particular object that's extended. So, watch again. If I click and drag this back to say, for example, the 5-second marker, you can see the duration of that particular item is still the same. Whereas, if I click and drag the rest of the items, their duration increases. If I disconnect this text caption and move it back to say, for example, the 3-second marker, and then extend the duration of the slide again, you can see now that that object isn't affected. And again, the simple reason for that is because this item is set to be displayed for a specific time. Okay, just one more thing to explain here. On this slide, we have 3 text captions and a button that are all set to be displayed for rest of slide. Now, in Captivate terms, buttons are interactive, and that simply means that they will respond to an event triggered by your learners. Objects, such as buttons, can be paused after a certain period of time. In layman's terms, this means that after a certain period of time, the entire slide will also be paused. What this also means is that any objects on the slide timeline that are located after the pause state will also be paused. The reason for this is that buttons have both active and inactive states. Looking at this particular button here, this first part is the active region, and this other part, clearly displayed on the object itself, is the inactive region. Now, I know that probably sounds quite confusing, so let me quickly demonstrate what this means. On this slide, we have a yellow text caption shown here. If I now change the starting point for that particular item and move it into the inactive region of the button, when I preview, do you think this text caption will appear? Well, let's test it and find out. The answer is no. Why? Because as far as Captivate is concerned, the slide is now waiting for a learner to do something. In this case, click the button. If I close the preview and then move the starting point for that particular text caption into the active region of the button and then preview one final time, now the text caption has enough time to be loaded before the playhead gets into that inactive button state. Don't worry if that seems like a lot of information to absorb. You'll be spending a lot more time learning about the timeline as you go through this course.